Hi, my name is Romain Lacourbas. I am cinematographer on Witcher Season 2.
Hey, this is Philippe Gossart, cinematographer on Season 2 of The Witcher. Welcome to the Go Creative Show.
Hello and welcome to the Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers. My name is Ben Consoli, and today we speak with Philippe Gossart and Romain Lacourbas, cinematographers for The Witcher Season 2. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hey.
Thank you. Hey.
There's quite a bit to talk about. Jean-Philippe, we had you on last year or so, year and a half, talking about The Witcher Season 1, and Season 2 just takes off where The Witcher 1 ended off. The look is great. I think you've refined the look. You've refined the style. Clearly, it looks like budget went up a little bit, and it's just such an awesome season, and I cannot wait to talk to you guys about it. Before we get there, just want to mention our sponsor today, Filmmakers Academy. Master your craft at filmmakersacademy.com. And we're also supported today by Arri Rentals. So thank you guys for supporting the show. And I want to encourage you all to follow us on your favorite podcast app, as well as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, where you can not only hear the show, but see the show. All things Go Creative Show at gocreativeshow.com. So, The Witcher Season 2. I'd like to start first with Romain, basically welcoming you to not only Go Creative Show, but The Witcher. Were you involved in Season 1 at all, or is Season 2 your first time with the show?
Season 2 was my first time. I got, at some point, a little bit before Season 1, I had a phone call with Lauren, who interviewed me and to offer me Season 1, but unfortunately I wasn't on the show, so I had to... so I couldn't join that season, and I joined the adventure on the second season only.
It certainly is an adventure. Jean-Philippe, I'll call you JP. It sounds like that's the proper way to talk to you, which is great. Yeah. Can you talk to me about the collaboration that you and Romain had on Season 2?
Well, I didn't know Romain at all when we started, and we've kind of met and got on very well together, and regularly talked about sequences, looked at each other's rushes, give each other's feedback, and now it became a very strong collaboration through the season, definitely.
Now, were each of you working together on all the episodes, or did you sort of do blocks of 4, or how did it work out?
Well, we did blocks. We did blocks basically. Romain started. I did block 2 with director Sarah Gorman, and I did some of the block 4 as well. Some days on it where Romain couldn't be there for it, but Romain shot the majority of the last 2 episodes as well.
Romain, how do you describe the look of The Witcher Season 2? Like, when you think about it, when you try to describe it, when you're sort of visualizing it, maybe even before you got to on set, what are you thinking?
I was looking for a more colorful show, and I really loved the way Season 1 was shot in terms of the lensing. You know, I really loved the anamorphic look that was cropped a little bit, if I remember correctly, JP, because it was the same ratio.
Yeah, it was.
But I thought it was very smart, and but I just and not only me, JP agreed to it. You know, we were really up for something more colorful, and so because the choice was to go and to shoot spherical this time, the large format came like the best solution pretty early. So wide and colorful would be the 2 words that could resume our approach for Season 2.
JP, why the choice to go spherical for Season 2?
That was a choice that Romain did, that I inherited, but I was very happy with it. We worked on the DNAs from Arris. They're beautiful lenses. They were slightly detuned. They had a really good feel to it. And I felt like they sat really, really well in the continuity of the show from Season 1.
Can you talk to me about that that decision? So Romain, you come in, the show already exists. There's a season 1 that JP and the team put together when they first shot season 1. You come in as a second cinematographer, you're taking some episodes for yourself, but you seem to come in with a very specific look that you wanted. You wanted to take it in a new direction. So that has to be kind of an interesting conversation to come into an already existing show and say, here are some new ideas. Can you kind of walk me through that process?
Sure. To be honest, it was not a tough thing, just because the worlds that are shown in season 2 don't exist. Most of the world is Kaer Morhen, right? And that doesn't exist. It's not shown in season 1. So it was easier for me and for us to take a different direction, and to explore different options. We didn't have to stick to what was established on season 1, even though there are some locations that are coming back. But so you see what I mean? It was giving us a lot of freedom. And to tell you the truth, it was, I'm not going to be very specific because it got a little bit, there was a little bit of a little bit of politics behind the fact of shooting spherical and anamorphic. And I'm a big fan of anamorphic, but for multiple reasons. Netflix was more into trying this one in anamorphic. That goes also with VFX reasons, but not only. And that was the element that guided me towards the large format ID. And I talked about it with JP, and we both thought at a very early stage of prep, and we both thought it was the best way to approach this season. Being able, it has a huge impact on the lensing. It allows you to compose wide shot in an easier way because you get the subject closer, and so it's another grammar, it's another way to shoot. But we were convinced that it would give us a great chance to films to shoot those huge stages, because the sets were pretty big, so it just made sense. And as far as the color is related, I think it's a matter of taste, really, and that's something we were agreeing as well. But we thought it made sense for the show, starting from episode 1, which is kind of fairy tale-y, story. We thought it would be a good way to start, and we just embraced it. Right.
So you came in and you said, let's change the look, more colorful. Like you said, you wanted to go away from anamorphic and shoot spherical. But in order to do that, you're saying, in order to get that wideness without shooting anamorphic, your thought was, let's go with large format.
Exactly that.
Am I understanding that correct?
Yeah,
so JP, when you hear this, and Romain's coming in, someone you haven't worked with, bringing some new ideas to this, how did you respond to that idea?
I think it's great. It kind of stay in the same vernacular than the show in season 1. I think the show is worked really well in season 2. It's a different journey. The characters are more mature. The story is more refined and richer to a certain extent. And I think, it doesn't jar, or it doesn't feel like you're looking at a different show. You're meeting the same character through a different travel that takes you over those 8 hours. And it sits really nicely in there. I think actually it's been a positive change to a certain extent. You can look at costumes, and Ray's costume is different from season 1 to season 2. You don't really question it. You just embrace it. There's more maturity in the characters. Freya was a young girl in season 1. She's a woman in season 2. It's more maturity. It's a change, but it's a change that sits really well, I think, to the story.
Romain, what do you think the spherical look does? Like, why were you pushing for that? What was it about season 2 and the story and just the basic feel of it that lended itself more to spherical lenses for you?
No,
or a spherical look.
No. Again, it was more of something that was kind of advised to go spherical, but I think the question is more about going large format rather than going spherical. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Sure.
I think and again, that idea of the large format really fit with the production design and all the concept drawing that I was looking and the floor plans of how big the set were going to be and it just made sense to be able to show as much as we could of those sets, like to include the characters in their environment, include the Witchers within Kaer and the lensing that you work with when you're shooting large formats allows you to see more of the location, to see more of the context. So again, I think what primarily drive me towards the large format was looking at all those concepts and talking with Andrew Lowe, the production designer, and you're like, it just made sense, how do we are able to stay close to our characters and at the same time to show and suggest where they are. It just looked like the perfect solution.
You had mentioned earlier that you went with the DNA LF lenses. Can you talk to me about what led you to that decision? What were the qualities of the lenses that were really working for you?
I should say we, JP and I, we were looking for imperfections, accidents. We were not looking for perfectly clinical, sharp, crisp lens, and we thought it would be interesting to bring a little bit of funkiness to the image. So we started a little bit. I think it was even before Christmas 2019, a very long time ago. We started testing a bunch of lenses. I think we're talking about 6 or 7 series of lenses, and more in the vintage glass, vintage style, But at the same time, we needed to have something that was reliable, meaning at that time, way before COVID, we were supposed to travel through a multitude of different locations. At some point, from the moment Block 2 starts, that means we have 2 full units running full time at the same time. So we kind of had to had a newer lens that we were sure would support and would not fail us. So we tested, I think, like Primo. The Primo 70, we tested the DNA, the signature. I can't remember. I think, to be honest, I think it was 6 or 7 series, and the one that seemed the most sexy and funky were the DNA. So that's what guided us towards those lenses.
JP, any particular focal length that you were favoring more than others with that DNA set?
I mean, I really love the 21. I think it's one of our hero lenses to the show. 21, 29 are just really beautiful lenses. We mixed it up for the wide end with some of the signatures, which we had refresh my mind, but I think it was the 12 and
a 15
signature. Yeah. And the 15 was an absolutely exceptional lens. It absolutely had no bending. That was a stunning lens. So you could, I used it on a sequence with Jennifer as the lens for the whole scene, as Taylor Ball kind of go into a mine, and the distortion, it gets distorted at some point, but it's very much acceptable and kind of worked really well in the moment.
Are you talking about the scenes where you like her visions, her dreams, Yennefer's visions and dreams? Oh, yeah, that was something I wanted to talk about because I love the way that you approach that. It's almost like it appears to me that you have the camera really close. They're centered most of the time in those kind of scenes. And there's distortion around the edges of the lenses. It's a really cool look, and it has almost like I think that thing is called a snorri cam. Is that what that's called when you wear like the mount and you have the camera in front of you like this and it kind of stays on the mount, like a reverse steady cam where you're wearing like a harness and the camera's coming right to your face. Does that ring a bell? I think it's called snorri cam.
It is.
It could be the. It was a version of the snorri cam.
Yeah.
It was absolutely a version of the snorri cam. Like, James Frater, or a camera operator, was a really talented man. Was fantastic. Really getting in there and really maintaining the shots and reacting to the actors with a perfect timing.
So you were using this, you said, what did you say, 21? No. What were you saying? Your 15s for that? 15
on this, yeah.
And what about the aberrations on the edges of the lenses? Were those brought in post, or was some of that natural?
Some of it was natural when you shoot wide open on the lens, and from memory, I think he has been enhanced in post.
And Roman, you had mentioned earlier that color was a big part of what you wanted to bring in for season 2. Those lenses, were you adding filtration on top of it? Was there anything done practically that was giving you that color, or were you relying mostly on, color grade later on?
No, so first there was quite a lot of work designing a lot at the beginning of the show to make sure those color would be enhanced, to make sure we would get enough color separation, color contrast, color separation, and that we had an overall saturation that we liked. So I would say that was the first research in terms of getting the colors. That goes obviously along with all the huge work that has been done with, by costumes and art departments, and obviously because it all starts with this, right? But to answer your question, the filtration, not really. We used some diffusion filter on the signature to help those to matching the DNAs. And from time to time there was some diffusion were used for some close-up or extreme close-up, like I would say pretty usual. But no, the DNAs, they have that sort of they're precise, but they're soft, and they're very gentle with skin tones, and the bokeh, the out of focus, like the depth, the out of focus part of the image are very very gentle, very soft, it's very, it has an organic feel to it, So it didn't need to be additionally filtered. It felt right.
Yeah. I want to talk about lighting in The Witcher Season 2. Something that I was noticing when watching this season is, yes, there is more saturation, it seems. It seems like there's more color across the board. I'm noticing that skin tones are a little bit richer. I'm noticing that moonlight is a little bit bluer. It seems as though the lights that are being used are a little bit richer and more saturated across the board. And the thing about The Witcher, for anyone that watches it, is it takes place in a time when there's no electricity. So every light has to be motivated by sun, fire, moon. So there's when you have that kind of limitation on what your lighting sources can be, is that challenge kind of like exciting for you guys, or do you find it to be limiting? I mean, talk to me about the way that you're making these light sources, work in your scenes. JP, we'll start with you.
I mean, I don't think it's limiting. It's actually quite nice because to a certain extent, this is your palette, this is your tool, this is where you're going with, and within that word, there's subterranean element where you can transform things further and bring different colors and kind of play with it. You can play with the time of the day, hugely, where the sun is, the color of it. The production design help us a lot as well, you know, to candle and torches and all those elements work really well as well. So it's quite a rich palette actually between blue, greens, sort of amber. Yeah. No, I don't think it's imitating. I think it's actually really a really nice way to work. You know, you've got specific tool for different places.
So let's break down well, we don't have to necessarily break down a scene, you know, from start to finish, but you, for example, have like an evening interior scene. There's a fireplace in the room, a few candles in the room. Romain, how are you approaching a scene like that, where you know the only source you really have is fire from the fireplace? I mean, that's really all you have to work with. Talk to me about the way that you would approach that type of scene.
If we're talking about a night scene, right, a night interior, there's actually two light sources that you can have. The first is, as you said, fire or candle, but you have the moonlight, which it's a convention, but that's on a show of this type, on a story of this genre. That is something that you can push and cheat and use as a color, as a lighting source, as even inside, you know, we pretty often we were doing those hard shaft of moonlight going through a window, and you can use the bounce of this that shifts the color a little bit as it bounces on the floor, on the walls, or on the furniture. So it's all about where you need to be realistic, basically. And I think this show allows you to get away a little bit from the realism, traditional realism, and you can push things a little bit more just because it's heroic fantasy, you know. And so you have it allows you to go a little more crazy that you would on a contemporary narrative. And to answer your question, I would on a scene that didn't need any special artifact, or there is not that many scenes like that. But I would use the candle or the fire as either the main key light, and then use the moon as, you know, some kind of spots on the backgrounds, or maybe like a sidekick on the faces. And as there is a lot of scenes that also are pretty dark, you could, and we did that on a few scenes, you could do that the other way and use the moonlight as the principal fill light, if I may say, or key light, and having a little bit of the fire and flicker filling the rest of the image. So I think if you think about fire and fire color and moonlight, and talking about fire color, you have also the flicker, you know, the way you use that flicker. Are you using it or are you not using it? If you're using it, is it flickering in the eyes or only in the side or the other way around? That starts giving you a lot of possibilities and a lot of options. So yes, sometimes you do miss headlights or car lights, or, you know, so or a neon tube somewhere on a shop. So, but there is still a lot of options with the natural elements, just because we have the option of enhancing it quite a lot due to the nature of the show and the episodes.
Yeah, JP, I saw you nodding your head when Romain was talking about kind of pushing it a bit, because you don't have to be as realistic in The Witcher season 2 as something more contemporary. It sounds like you're along the same roads with that. Can you talk to me about maybe a situation where you pushed it a little bit? You pushed the fire a little more, you pushed the moonlight a little bit more, and you played with that.
I've played a little bit in the lab, I guess, where we transition from the grey old of Cameron where we had a blue moonlight, and then we transitioned to some corridors, and then we go into the lab, and I've kind of play with a really dirty greeny color that sort of give it that sort of more subterranean feel with it, which worked, I thought, really well. I've played with that as well in the sewers. I think it's in episode 4 from the top of my head. Same thing. I've kind of played with a sort of really dirty green color, and that was contrasted really nicely with the flambeaux that were carrying the actors at the time. I think again it just sort of enhanced the set design. That was all that sort of mossy and wet and dirty underground sewers. So it's kind of lovely because you can kind of push a little bit the colors, and you don't have to, as Romain was saying, you don't have to be realistic. You just have to find something that's satisfying visually, that kind of support the story and kind of create the sense of danger and the fact that it feels a bit unsettled and dirty, and you don't want to be in there. You kind of feel that those people are in a hostile environment.
Talk to me a little bit more about the use of moonlight in the series, because I had mentioned, when we first started talking about the overall lighting for the show, that moonlight was quite blue. And it is feeling like there was a lot of saturation in that moonlight, and you really are pulling the blues out of it. What kind of, just everybody's a little bit different with their approach to moonlight. Some people are more on the silver side, some people are more on the blue side. It kind of runs the gamut. How, Roman, do you use moonlight in The Witcher Season 2? What was kind of your philosophy for it? Because it was a primary light source.
Yeah, I started thinking that at the beginning, just because, again, episode 1 is a little bit apart from the show, just because the journey really starts, Geralt and Ciri's journey, and really starts from episode 2, and the discovery of all the Witcher starts from episode 2. So episode 1 is really a moment between father and daughter, and father meeting an old friend. And again, as I said, because it has that very fairy tale-y tone and atmosphere, I thought the moonlight there needed to be bluer. It needed to be closer to some of the Disney movies that are extremely like Beauty and the Beast, that are very saturated and very color separated, and I thought the approach needed to remind the moonlight, the color of the moonlight needed to remind this style for the first episode. And then as we go through Cameron, we thought with JP that the silver cyany moonlight needed to kind of take over, and so my first idea during prep was to try to differentiate the different worlds by the color of the moonlight. Not something super obvious, but just a very slight touch of difference, like when Yennefer is before they get attacked at the end of episode 1. The idea was to have a very heavy green and cyan green moonlight, and then you cut back to Geralt and Ciri, who are more in a bluer environment, and then you soon discover that Cameron is more on a silvery cyanish look. So to tell you the truth, that didn't, because it was such a long show that sometimes you like, and I'm sure that happened many times with JP as well, sometimes you're like, okay, ideally this location is, for example, more cyanish, but then sometimes doesn't fit the scene, so you just tweak it a little bit. But the main direction is there, and minor tweaks are usually not noticed, But I was just hoping that in the subconscious of the audience, it would give just a little bit, another key of where we are, and another tip about the nature of the location, even though you don't need to describe it because we know where we are by the storytelling. But I thought giving an identity, to places we go through using the moonlight was interesting. And it usually influenced the color of the fire because it has to, when you start playing a lot like we did with color and hence the gap between the cool light and the warm light. It's a very thin line between that. You don't want to cross it and go too far because it can become a little bit too much and cheesy and vulgar. And at the same time, as we were saying, we wanted to push it a little bit. So it's always very challenging, but in a nice way, and interesting to play with, those extreme sort of light and trying to make it interesting and look good.
One of the courses on Filmmakers Academy that personally I think you guys would really benefit from is called How to Be a Camera Assistant. And it's taught by Derek Edwards, who's an accomplished camera assistant and has all sorts of information that you guys really need to know. So Derek, welcome to Go Creative Show. I wanted to ask you, to me, it seems like the relationship between a camera assistant and your DP is crucial. Can you talk to me about that?
So when I work with these DPs, it's not just me working as a tool for them. It's me listening and understanding what they want to do. So when you have this relationship with your DP and you feel the passion that he's pushing onto you, it doesn't turn into work. It turns into you wanting to accomplish this goal with him. And that's what I love about these passionate DPs out there. I'm not getting yelled at. I'm getting pushed to excellence.
I love that. Now, if you guys want to be pushed to excellence, you know where to go. Filmmakersacademy.com, where you can see Derek's course and a whole bunch of other courses as well. Filmmakersacademy.com. So, JP, I want to transition to lighting exteriors now. We talked quite a bit about interiors. A lot of the show is set outside. And I actually want to start with something that when I was watching, I was thinking must be a particular challenge, is shooting outside in snow-covered scenes. There's quite a bit of that in the show, and it presents a unique challenge of basically having a giant bounce card underneath all of your talent and everything. So can you talk to me about the way that you approached shooting exterior, in particular snowy scenes, and then we can kind of go on from there?
Yeah, I think, the starting point with shooting exteriors is controlling the sun pretty much. You need to control your source, and it depends the environment that we were in. If we were shooting on a back lot where you can have big fly squats and 40 by 40 or 50 by 50 frames on huge crane to block the sun and kind of tracking the sun through the day, or on the opposite, using large sources to bring the sun, because sometimes you shoot sequences outside over multiple days, so you need to kind of try to create some continuity as much as possible. So that's first quite a big challenge, especially when you're in the north of Europe, where the weather changes drastically from one day to the other, not to say by the hour sometimes. That's one challenge. As far as snow cover itself, I don't find it hugely challenging, because it's sort of part of the environment, and when you get into closer coverage, you can just make it negative fill and kind of control the level of bounce and kind of model the lighting on your cast as you wish. But no, I think the main challenge was obviously, like for anyone, is controlling your primary source, which is the sun in those moments, really.
So just thoughts in general about shooting outside. And do you share the same concerns, Romain, when you're out there? Is it mostly about continuity for you? Because, weather changes quite a bit where you are.
Yeah, maintaining the continuity, and also, which is keeping the control in a way. I mean, it's harder. I find exteriors extremely hard just because you don't have the control and everything. And there is, as you said, there is the change of the weather, which is kind of your biggest enemy. And trying to read in the sky with your gaffer is always a challenging game that no one likes to play, really. But I think it's even harder to try to find an interesting visual approach that makes sense, that makes sense for the story, that serves the story, and that looks good. Because again, there is so many elements that are hard to control. So I'd say, I totally agree. And this usually, not always, but it usually start with controlling the sun. Obviously, in an ideal world, if you shoot on a backlot and you have the budget that goes with it, you start by cutting the sun and recreating your own sun. I'm not saying that that's an ideal. Obviously, you cannot do that always and on all the scenes, and sometimes using the real sun is great, but it depends on the length of the scene. So I would say, my first approach would be how do we control the sun today, and how do we make our own sun if we need some sun.
Now, do you have any thoughts on the snowy exteriors? Does that provide any challenges to you? Any benefits of having just a big kind of white surface under your talent?
It's actually great. It's like when you go on high mountains and shoot a movie, you usually don't bring a light with you. You just bring a black and negative fill, and and big black drapes, and so there's a little bit of this. It's actually a big help, and you start working more with negative fill, and that's for the snow cover thing. Now, seeing falling snow is just amazing. It gives so much atmosphere, so much realism to a scene, and we had an amazing SFX team that were really able, even outside, not only on stage but on location outside in forest or on the backlot, they were able to maintain, and we were able to define precisely the amount of snow and how much we wanted to see through or not, and get that gives so much perspective to the image, that gives so much richness to it. It's shooting under the snow was great. I had a great time doing it. It's painful for a lot of people, but it's so rewarding, really.
Why is it painful?
Well, there is a lot of parameters that needs to work at the same time. There's not only us and our camera and our light and our covers and all, but you have the SFX that are really such an important factor. And if the wind starts to pick up, they need to change their plan. Again, and I have to say thank you to Ronnie Iraqi, who's he's a magician to me, and he has always another solution when the weather was changing to give us what we wanted. But it seems easy like this with words, but there is so many things involved as soon as you start playing with rain and wind and snow that it's very difficult, and the cold, and the costume, and you have sometimes we use the foam, and if it sticks on the hair, then you have a problem. You would have, there is, it's just a very complicated setup usually, but fun.
JP, it sounds fun. It sounds like it's challenging, obviously, but it's just another challenge. Like, that's kind of what you guys and what we all do in film work, is just fix problems, get through challenge. Sure, That's kind of what it is. JP, you talked about continuity being a big issue for you, or a big concern when you guys are doing exterior shooting, not just the weather, just kind of in general. What are some of the ways that you made sure that you kept continuity across multiple days, across multiple weather situations on The Witcher Season 2? Like, what is your technique?
I guess there's depends where you start, like you basically, as Romain mentioned it, you can start in a sunny day and kind of embrace the sun for a reason, and then the following day it could be very overcast, and then you bring your own sun, and you just have to basically you just have to find a way, I guess. I mean, every situation are a bit different. In some location, it was quite challenging when we went to shoot in the Lake District in the north of England, where again you're in mountain, so suddenly the clouds come and you're in a patch of fog, and sometimes you have to wait. Sometimes you have to just assume that it's going to take a little bit longer. We've been relatively lucky all the way through. I think it worked out pretty well on that front. But you just always have to have a B plan in your pocket ready to pull it out when it changes. Really, you need to have an alternative.
I want to talk about battle scenes in The Witcher Season 2. There's quite a few of them. They're really significant and interesting, and I like the way that you guys approach them. Who wants to start? There's so many battles here to dive into. Is there one for either of you that was a particular challenge or you think had an interesting story to it in the way that you handled it? Who
you had the battle, I think, Romain. I didn't have any battle this year. No, I didn't have any battle actually.
You had right. Oh, the fight. Yeah.
You didn't have any battles, JP?
No, you had a few fights, didn't you?
I had fights, but
yeah.
I had the Queen Leshy fight, which was like it was much more a more classical fight to a certain extent, more cat and mouse sort of chase with Ciri and Henry, but I don't had a large battle as you probably had as much.
Well, then, Romain, we'll start with you. Is there sort of a large battle scene that you shot that you can speak to, and talk to us about the way that you kind of handled it, some of the challenges that you overcame?
I would say the two biggest ones. So there is the Leshy fight, if we can consider that as a battle scene. I think we can, right?
Yeah, of course we can. And that's in episode 2. Yeah,
in the lab, which was really it was extremely fun, because at some point you have a Witcher that basically became a giant tree with huge vines coming out of it, and that that can hit people with it and kill people with it, and Eskel, the Witcher that has became cursed, and so that became a tree, is fighting Vesemir and Geralt, and it was very interesting to design that scene and work on the shot with Steven Sergic, the director, during prep, and then to figure out how we were going to shoot it, because in this type of scenario you have that huge creature that cannot be represented only by a human. So you obviously have a guy suited in blue suit, and but he needed to be like 3 meters high. So you have to, find ways, depending on the shot, to make him look like higher, and to simulate the vines with some sort of big, all those foam cylinder that you use in swimming pool, ridiculous stuff like that.
Is that what you were using?
Yeah, that's what we had to use.
The pool noodles?
Exactly, the pool noodles. Just because when the vine travel the room and goes in direction of Geralt, and he hits it with his sword, if he was just hitting the air like this, you would simply don't buy it, because you need to buy that there is interaction and a shock, and anyway. So it was about finding ideas like this that would help the action seem real and true, help the actors, and also help the camera, because you actually see what the CG vine is later going to be. So the camera, of course, can frame it, anticipate, and frame accordingly. It's about the tricks and ideas, the the old-fashioned way. Saying the old-fashioned, I mean the old way we were doing cinema. And that's the great thing, that even on big shows like this, even on the 21st century, you need to find ideas and sometimes jump on a ladder and put the camera on top of a ladder instead of a crane because the set is designed this way, or you have to find a way to make that guy bigger. You see what I mean? It's about cheating, but with very old recipes sometimes that do work. So that was a very fun scene to do.
Well, for the people that haven't seen that episode, you had mentioned that it's this big, large tree, but it's more than. It's not like a leafy tree. Like it's all these vines and branches, and they're everywhere, and they kind of extend, and sometimes they fill the entire frame and the entire space. And something that I was thinking about during that fight scene is, I'm like, just the shadows alone. Like, how can you create realistic shadows for these CG vines that are just kind of everywhere all the time? Like, I think you guys did a really, really good job of making that as realistic as a, wild, monster vine tree can be. It really fit in the scene well. And what my question to you is, first of all, was that something that was concerning to you, is the shadow lines? And also, how are, like, on set, in order to frame for something that's constantly changing shape and getting bigger and smaller in the frame, did you have some sort of monitoring on set where you could see, like, a wireframe or something maybe even more realistic of what it was that you were shooting?
Yeah, we had some sort of a previs. I say some sort because, to be honest, it all started with, concept drawing to realize how this creature was going to look. And then the SFX started, and the prosthetics starting working on an extremely realistic makeup. It was really amazing what they did. And then from there you start, storyboarding, but we couldn't previs the whole scene. There was also, in addition to it, there was a stunt previs. But then some key moments were actually done by the VFX with a proper previs, but we didn't have the integrity of the scene. So I would say, if I remember correctly, I'd say maybe 60% of it was previs, maybe a little bit more than this. So when you get you familiarize yourself with that previs, you usually try to start with those previs shots. Then you getting used in a way of how the creature move and what it would do and everything. And then it's about a very tight and a very collaborative discussion between stunts, VFX, and obviously Steven, director, to make each moment to work. That's basically the process, that triangle between stunt, VFX, and director, camera. As far as the shadows, to answer your question, the shadows were obviously a big concern for me. But on this one, again, pool noodles. It was extremely, extremely helpful because some of the shadows, when you can do a lot of things. You can simulate. It's just a matter of timing and speed and how you're going to use it. That it solves a lot of issue as far as our casted shadows are the subjects.
I love that. Do you have any pictures of that? The CG maybe? Blue guy with the pool noodles. That'd be so great to see.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure. I can find one. I'll find one.
Please send to us, because I would love to share those with the audience, just as a visual as we're talking.
Sure.
And just to round out that little conversation about that scene, I know you did the previs, but were you seeing anything on set? Like, did you actually have any, like, virtual, I don't even know what the terminology is, but, like, you can fire up, like, Unreal Engine or something and actually see the scenes on the green screen as you're working. It's not the final look, but it's something just for framing. So no, you were just purely shooting into.
Yeah, we had an iPad with the previs, a few iPads with the previs, and we knew the shot were going to go from there to there. But no, we had no Real Engine or nothing that was being able to be like a match and overlay with our camera, and no, not on that fight. We used something closer to it on episode 8, but not for this one now.
Now, I know, JP, you said you didn't have any large-scale battle scenes, but do you have an example of something with, you know, a certain level of intricate, you know, complications, maybe some visual effects that were challenging to work through, just something you can point to on one of your episodes?
We had sort of the follow-up in episode 2 with the Queen Leshy and the myriapods fights, where we use as well some pool noodles for some of it, and very simple rock system to interact with the actors. There was a challenge in terms of location because we cheated in many different locations. So it was how to create a journey that feels realistic to the space. And that was pretty challenging as well. Not much previews on that as such. So it was very much one of working from reference of height of the creature and kind of make it work on the day, kind of finding our feel on the day with it. You know, working with, obviously, as a stunt V's that was giving us the key moments. But no, otherwise it was, it was pretty much like discovering it and exploring it more on the day.
Now, you both mentioned height being one of the first concerns that you're dealing with, because, you know, you have to have accurate height for framing. So in those situations where you just have, you know, somebody dressed in a blue suit, are they on stilts? Are you just accounting for extra headroom? Or like what is happening to make an accurate height in scenes like that?
A tennis ball on the top of a really high stand worked really well. I mean, it's, again, very simple, but it's efficient. It works. You know, it's like you just get your eye lines and you do those silly shots of a plate with a tennis ball in the middle and do a clean plate afterwards. All that sort of things. And use your imagination as far how quickly a creature moves and that sort of thing.
Now, I'm sure these scenes are, you're humbly sort of playing it down a little bit, but I think that there has to be a lot of, there's just so much prep work that has to go into these scenes. Even the simplest of scenes, when you add visual effects, you have to have a ton of prep work in it. So what kind of collaboration are you doing, and JP, we'll start with you, with the visual effects team?
Well, I think where we start first is storyboarding, where we've done a lot of storyboarding because we need to do it to give a chance to the visual effects department to budget the sequence, to see how many shots we've got with the creatures, what the creatures want to do, how complex are the shots. So that's the first parameter. Then secondly, you know, you kind of work with what is this creature can do, and how does he move, and how does he interact with the space, and that's really like the second layer. And then you go and take your camera and everyone else, and you try to shoot it, and that's sort of the way you do it. But you start with a plan that you don't follow up. I mean, I think we probably achieved 75% of the storyboard that we planned, and then we've kind of remodeled when the space wasn't working, or we couldn't quite get the camera where we wanted it, or the shot that we created was impossible, or, you know, that sort of thing. You just need to think on your feet then. But no, the challenge of the space is when Siri arrived into that sort of huge rock arena where there is a waterfall. That was quite a tricky space to shoot, because you had the bottom of that huge rock formation, and what you keep going in your head is like, I need to shoot it. I need to understand how small I feel into the space, how fragile the character is into the space. So that was something that we've captured, I think, but it took a bit of work, really. You know, you really have to use your wide lenses to always feel the space, feel the height of the rock wall around the always kind of dwarfing your actor to a certain extent. So we show it really wide and close into the space, yeah.
To create that sense of, to create that scale so that the characters seem smaller in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. And to capture the vastness of the space, which is absolutely massive.
Yeah, and that is something that I noticed on season 2, even a little bit more than season 1, is that even though you are shooting spherical, you're shooting large format, and you do get those big, wide vistas. But I think what season 2 does really well, and you certainly did it in season 1 too, but I feel like maybe just because it's fresher in my mind, but I'm noticing that there's a lot of the dialogue scenes, just the drama, just the moments where there's just drama happening. There's oftentimes in Witcher season 2 when you're almost like, you almost kind of forget you're watching a fantasy. It starts to become just like a drama on occasion in each episode. And I feel like a lot of attention is paid to, or just as much of attention is paid to the simple scenes, the back and forth dialogue between two people, as you do with the visual effects scenes. At least as a viewer, that's the kind of impression that I'm getting. And I'm curious, Roman, what your thoughts are for something like that.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling like this, because that was kind of at the point. I mean, we tried, and I think that's the case for all episodes, to be honest. We tried to make sure all the details and even the smaller scene had not to be necessarily epic, but that the every single detail to be able to buy and like every single detail in the far background, and that comes thanks to VFX, obviously, but long meetings and long discussion with the VFX to be able to, because as JP said, at some point there is a budget, and there is no way you're gonna have the ability to get high-end VFX on all the shots of an episode. That's never gonna happen. So at some point, as the discussion goes on and the meeting goes on and the prep goes on, you need to prioritize certain shot, obviously the wide shot, but it sometimes has an impact on the way you're shooting a film. So I know that with Steven Sergic and with Ed it was the same at some point, when you're not gonna get all the VFX that you'd like to, or regarding the amount of shots you want to shoot, then you just adapt. Rather than shooting something that's going to be possibly average, you try to shoot it and to tell the story slightly differently, so the quality is going to be there on pretty much all the shots. So I think it's about choosing the priority, and it's about being able to, when you have all the cards in hand and when you have all the answers, and talking only about very difficult scene in terms of VFX and far background and set extension and stuff like that. I think it's about making a choice at some point. But the goal of I'm sure every director was to not making sure the audience wouldn't feel any compromise. So it was about, again, making the choice. What's the best way to shoot that scene? What's going to be the most epic way to shoot that scene, considering the obligations we have, whether it's location, weather, money, VFX, right? Something like that.
Yeah. Is there anything in lighting or in camera lenses or any sort of technologies that are emerging now, or future technologies, something that you're excited about, maybe something new that you're excited to use on your next project? Is there anything kind of going on right now in lighting or camera or lenses that is sparking your interest? And JP, we'll start with you, or Roman, whoever has something fresh in your mind.
Well, I nothing new, but I'd say one of the first things that really intrigues me, because I've never used it before. I've seen a multitude of tests, but I've never used it, are obviously the virtual set. I mean, the LED walls.
Yeah.
That's not new though, but that's something that would certainly have been very interesting for some of our scene in season 2, and I'm sure that it's going to be as time goes by, it's going to be better and better. So yeah, and then in terms of lenses, that's not new either, but I'm quite interested by the new series of anamorphic 1.5 anamorphic. There's more and more coming. Existing right now, and there's more coming, and I'm sure. And that's being able to use anamorphic on large format in a fairly easy way feels quite appealing to me. Yeah, and then on the lighting side, I don't really believe the LED, at least not anytime soon, are going to replace any big source of light, big HMIs and big tungsten. I don't really think so. And if it does, it's going to take a while. But I'm all the time curious about, those bigger sources that are coming on, not only from Arri, from many manufacturers who start,
like not the panels, but like a LED Fresnel or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the bigger LED Fresnel is something really interesting. I haven't seen it yet. I mean, we had some small one which were incredibly useful, worked really, really well.
Do you remember what they were? Which ones?
They were the what is the
Q5?
Q5 and Q7 that we had, which were Grell. But I mean, I will follow up on Romain. I think the volume is a really interesting technology. We've seen it used beautifully well. I think it's got further to go, and that is exciting about what we can do with it and where we can take it. That's definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, we were using like RIFA kits and all like the film school. It's just, it's so crazy that now it's standard. It would be unusual to have a light and not have a computer attached to it. All sorts of controls and knobs. And it's like that is the norm. To have all this control over your light is just, it's so crazy. And you almost feel bad for like kids that are just going through film school now that haven't had the experience of just a simple light that you just turn on and it's on without having to control it. There was such a freedom to that type of lighting to me. And as much as I love the control of, what you can do, it's still, I mean, to have to learn basically a new computer system, a new operating system every time you have a light is crazy. But I mean, that's the way that it's going. And the control is just, it's excellent. I'm looking at that Q5 right now. I haven't used one, but people are talking quite a bit about them, and they're great. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But just the amount of control you have is crazy. Yeah.
And I mean, it must be hard for the gaffers to keep up, because there is a lot of new stuff coming out, quite often. And as you said, everything needs to be attached to a computer or an iPad, or and there's so much that there's a lot of new toys to try, right?
There certainly is. This is the time of year for it. Well, thank you guys both. I really appreciate it. The show is excellent. I'm sure people listening to this episode have already seen or will soon be seeing the series. And of course, you go see season 1. Season 2 is out now. They're both available on Netflix, the whole thing. And it just looks great. And both of you guys did such an excellent job. So thank you for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, I want to thank Jean-Philippe Gossart and Romain Lacourbas, cinematographers for The Witcher Season 2. Thank you guys so much for being on. I also want to thank our sponsors today, Filmmakers Academy. Master your craft at gocreativeshow.com/Filmmakers Academy. When you go there, don't forget, you get 10% off with coupon code GOCREATIVE10. So check it out for yourself. We Love those guys. GoCreativeShow.com/Filmmakers Academy. And of course, we want to thank Arri Rental for sponsoring this episode. Thank you as well. Our producer, Connor Crosby, you can find him at ignitionvisuals.com, and Dave Siegel from siegelsound.com, who mixes and masters and makes the show sound so good. Thank you both for your help. I want to thank Facebook. What am I saying? I want to thank you, and I want to encourage you by going to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, where you can find us and follow us. Of course, on YouTube, you get to see the episode, not just hear it. So that's a lot of fun. You get to see our guests. And all things Go Creative Show at gocreativeshow.com. And if you want to follow me, you can find me on Instagram at Ben Consoli, BenConsoli. I post a bunch of stuff, behind the scenes clips of what I'm doing with my production company. And also, I share some really interesting behind the scenes from TV shows and movies that seem to be doing well. You guys seem to like all that stuff. So I will continue doing it. I want to thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next week on another episode of the Go Creative Show, a podcast for filmmakers.